So how is racing? And if you want to talk about some of your previous experiences before you answer this question, but like how is it different for you racing in the UK and England and kind of traveling all over that over there compared to what you were doing in the States?
Yeah, I would say this may come off a little bit, or may come across a little bit rude to the U.S. folk. Um, the racing is a lot more assertive and aggressive over here, but there's a lot fewer incidents. So nobody will ever give you anything while racing out here, except you just don't crash either. It's a weird thing because in the U.S. you have a lot of very aggressive racing, and a lot of the times you do get many full course cautions and things like that. But in the UK, at least from my experience, we've had very few full course cautions, and I can't tell you how many times I've felt like I've nearly caused a full course caution. So it's been like it's just such good racing, so close, so tight, and it's just everyone is out there to win, no matter where you are in the back.
So you were saying that you felt like you've maybe caused some of those, but like I'm sure you know that's not the case. But as far as you and your fellow drivers, the people that you're competing with, I noticed that you're one of the few Americans. Do you get along with those guys off the track? Are you kind of starting to build some friendships with those people? And how do they view Americans as far as racing and all that stuff?
I think for a lot of people, it's how you would expect the friendly competition to be. You are competitors on the track, and you can do what you choose off the track, and nobody really holds any hard feelings. Once we get off the track, and once we've gone through everything. Once the race weekend's over, it's back to normal, and then you come back the next weekend and you say hi to everyone. It's nice to have a couple of Americans. We always, a few of us, we come together sometimes and just talk, reminisce about. Some of us used to race with each other in karting and things like that. We were talking about just how it's different to live in the UK versus in the US, and how different racing is. Just exactly what we're talking about now. And then, yeah, it's nice to be friends with people from all over the world. There's a very diverse class in GB4, not just British people, but there's everyone, and so you get to meet a lot of people.
Yeah, I've noticed that. It seems like so. But just kind of real quick away from the track, what are you kind of getting into? I've noticed that you have some. You like to do some social media content where you maybe do like a day in the life and kind of show what you've been up to. But yeah, just as far as away from the track, what's been keeping you busy?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it's when you're not at the track, you're training for racing in whatever way you can. So most days I'm in the gym, training, keeping that muscle mass going throughout the week, in preparation for races and things like that. Just working on my overall fitness to make sure that that's not a factor while racing. Just more light pastimes, but still physical stuff. I do like to run. I like to climb and things like that. So I just got back from the climbing gym not too long ago, and it's good fitness, but it's good mental training exercises as well. But a lot of what I do is focused around racing, and making sure that I'm a good driver and like on and off the track.
Is it hard for you to maybe slow down when you're not? Obviously you're training away from the track, but like obviously there's times where you have to do other stuff. Is it hard for you to? I don't know if you're like a busybody type of person, but I would assume that you are. Like you'd like to stay busy, like to stay active, keep your brain stimulated and all that. So is that true or?
Actually, surprisingly not. The only time I like to think is when it's about racing, and you can't do that all the time. And so there's just sometimes there's a set couple of hours where you're not really doing anything for a little while. It's especially hard, being an athlete in a different country. There's a lot of things that you aren't able to do, and then just you're not with school friends or things like that. Everyone is back home. They're either asleep or um, you know, busy doing school and things like that, and so you have to make your own time. But yeah, no, I think like it's hard, but at the end of the day, all I think about is racing, and so it definitely is hard to focus and settle down a little bit. But at the end of the day, that's why I'm here.
And you're mentioning some of your friends, and I noticed that I think it's your dad that comments on some of our posts on the Wings and Wheels stuff, Team WWF. But is it? Are they able to watch you race? Are they able to communicate with you as much as you would be in the States? Obviously, like I'm guessing they're watching some of the live streams, and how's that work with your family and friends?
Yeah, I mean, all my family watches the live streams and stuff like that. It's great that GB4 has such a professional presentation when it comes to the live streams and stuff. It's very good. Great commentary, great footage, great coverage, everything like that. We get all the races, which is awesome. So it gives my family the opportunity to watch that, and not just my family, but everyone around the world. And then just a lot of friends as well keep track of that kind of thing. Um, what was the other part of that question?
Uh,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. I think you answered it very well there. That was pretty much the gist of that question. So, but I did notice as far as we were talking about the commentary for GB4. Why does it seem that? And I noticed I was going to ask you about what you did. I think you did some GB3 color commentating. I'll ask you about that in a second. But why? This is a kind of a maybe just a funny statement, but it seems like every announcer or commentator who has an accent, they're just like way better at it when it comes to racing. It's just so funny. I've noticed that. Is that like? But you said those guys do a great job. But is that something that you've noticed too? If you have an accent, you're just way better at commentating racing.
I don't know if it's the accent. I think it's got something to do with where you're from and the accent existing.
Yeah, I got
I
you.
think one thing I noticed, I've talked to a lot of commentators in the US as well as the UK, and I can definitely sense a bit of a difference in work ethic and kind of interest in it in a different way. It's not that US commentators aren't interested in what they're commentating on, but in the UK, there's this sort of uh, responsibility that they hold where they take everything very, very seriously. I was speaking to Lewis, who is the commentator for GB4 and GB3, and he said at the beginning of the season he would go to test days, take out a spotter's guide, and just stand around a corner and watch and try to name every single car for the entire day.
Yeah,
And that was like, by the end of the day, if he wasn't able to name every single car that passed just by looking at them within like half a second, then you would have to go back to another one. And I don't really think you see. It's possible that they do, but I think for the large majority of it, it doesn't really happen in the U.S. And I think there's not as many opportunities for commentators in the U.S. as well. So there's a bit of that, but it's just the nature of racing in the U.S. It's not necessarily a problem. It's just the way it is.
that's interesting. No, and I appreciate that answer. I was just kind of curious about that, but that's interesting. I feel like those guys are so knowledgeable, but obviously the work ethic, all the time before race, they put the work in, so it makes them obviously seem very like smooth when they're doing their commentating. But how was your experience doing the GB3? What was that like for you?
It was impressive to be able to sit next to Lewis and like watch him actually go out. And you always think to yourself while you're watching a race, you're like, oh, I could do that. I could say those things and this and that. Then you're sitting in the booth, and the speed at which he commentates on everything is just insane. He really does just know the cars by heart. It's crazy. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, this car is passing this car, but it was a lot of fun. It was great. It was one of those few things that I felt very happy being able to bring over from the U.S. That's a pretty common thing in the U.S. that we have is color commentary from other drivers. You see it in the USF Pro Championships, which we had Elliot Cox and Ayrton Halkin, and both of them, I believe, were able to do color commentary. And that was always something that I wondered why we didn't do. And so I was able to snag myself an opportunity where there was a seat open, and I asked and received.
It's funny. I've done some radio broadcasting for football games, and I'm more of a like I would say if I could do anything, it'd probably be basketball commentating because that's where like I'm most knowledgeable. But man, football, it was so hard. I have such a respect for what those guys do now, TV, radio, and all that stuff. But if we could kind of switch gears towards your last weekend, it was your second time at Silverstone as part of this championship. So maybe just talk about how that weekend went for you, how it was being at Silverstone again, if it was easier your second time being there, and just overall how the weekend went.
Yeah, it was nice. My family came over for this race. It's my grandma's favorite track to watch from, so it was a good opportunity for her to come back and watch racing again in person. This is the first time that my dad and grandmother had seen me race the GB4 car, which is odd to say because we're almost done with the season at this point. But and when you're 4,000 miles away from home, it's not easy to do, is it? So it was good. It was a little bit tough. The first race of the weekend went pretty well. It was our worst starting position, which was 12th, and then we were meant to start 8th and 1st. and we ended up finishing 10th in that first race. The second race, it started raining on our out lap, and I had to come into the pits, and there wasn't quite enough room in the pit lane for everyone. And so when we made our tire change, we got boxed in, and we weren't able to get out, and ended up, I think, P17. And then, unfortunately, in race 3, we just DNF for mechanical. So it is how it is. I think in race weekends go that way sometimes, but at the end of the day, when we went there and we were able to do qualifying, which was a huge improvement from what we had earlier in the season, I'd say that we still did learn quite a lot.
And as far as all the tracks you've been to this season, I know you have two rounds left. It looks like, or two events left, or tracks left. Brands Hatch and Donington Park. But as far as do you have a favorite track you've been to so far? And is there a reason maybe it's your favorite, maybe there's a couple that you like?
I actually do like Silverstone quite a lot. I think it's easy to say one because it's Silverstone, right? It's a really cool track.
Mm-hmm.
You get to race where Formula One cars do, and it's just overall a very nice circuit. I think the layout is nice. It's got a wide variety of corners as well. And I'd also say I'm looking forward to Brands GP. That's going to be, I would say, one of my better rounds, just based on driving style and racing style. I think I have a lot of confidence around a track like that, and so I am looking forward to that one.
So I guess, kind of compared to these, maybe some of the courses, or the tracks that like USF 2000 races on in the states. How are these courses maybe different than like Road America, or anything like that? Or maybe they're not different. So just what do you think about that?
They are a lot different. As you're on the right track, they're a lot more technical, I would say, than tracks in the U.S. are. They have a lot of sweepers a lot of times. So when you have Silverstone, which has Abbey, Cops, you could almost call Maggots and Beckett's a sweeper. Stowe is another one, but that's 4 corners on one track that you classify as a sweeper. And then also within that, there's a lot of low braking zones, changes in directions in high and low speed corners as well. And that's the same for a lot of different tracks. Silverstone is a flat track. The same is with Snetterton, which is another round we had. But then Donington, Oulton Park, and Brands GP are all very, very high elevation changes, stuff that you just wouldn't see in the U.S. in the same way. You get the same elevation change as Brands GP in the at Road America, but you don't get it in the middle of a corner like you do at Road America, or like you do at Brands GP. So, for an example, like take turn 7 and then the hurry downs into turn 8, which is a huge drop in straight in elevation, but it's just a straightaway at the end of the day. You would have that as turn 1 at Brands GP. So it's quite extreme, and it's a lot of fun to be able to get around corners with such high elevation changes that you don't really get the opportunity to do in the U.S., at least certainly not in the Midwest.
So basically, I know you have 2 rounds, 2 rounds left, and we'll talk about that. But as far as like just learning all that in your first season, all these different uh, tracks, and getting used to your car, and just the different style of racing, do you feel like going into next season? Like, I know you're not thinking about next season yet, probably, but like you're probably going to be way more comfortable, right? As far as knowing the ins and outs of the tracks, and just having your own routine down for another year. Is that true? Or
Yeah. There's a huge advantage to be had when it comes to understanding the car on the track. I mean, you can see it because even though this was the first year of this car in this regulation for GB4, you had people testing in like September of last year, so they had half a year on the inexperience, and you can kind of see, if we had started from square one with a lot of people, I think we would have been higher up, but that's just not how matters went. And so next year, wherever I may be, as long as it's in the UK, I think I have a huge advantage going in, and understanding a little bit more of these tracks, and just the way that the cars in the UK handle, with this tire spec and things like that.
yeah, and then so kind of going into the rest of the season, I know this is probably a loaded question, but like, is there something that you're trying to focus on personally, or maybe your team's trying to focus on, just to have a good outing the next 2 rounds?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues so far has been a little bit of focus on my part. I think I've been lacking a little bit of maybe that vigor that I had when I was a little bit younger. Not that I'm old or anything, I'm only 20, but there's definitely a difference between a 16-year-old racing and a 20-year-old racing. So just finding my rhythm again, because you feel like a bit of a fish out of water when you're going to another country and experiencing all these new things for the very first time. It's just you have to kind of find yourself again. So that's been a bit of a journey, but I think once we got to Silverstone, that's where it started to kind of click into place. It's unfortunate that the weekend didn't go our way, but at the end of the day, we still feel confident in what I'm capable of and what the team is capable of at this point.
Is there someone that you kind of lean on for confidence? Maybe not confidence boost, but you know what I'm saying? Because you were just talking about how you just like fish out of water, but I feel like everybody has someone they lean on a little bit for a confidence boost. So is that somebody on your team maybe that kind of helps you with that? Someone over there that's with you daily, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really have anyone daily, but definitely within the team, my engineer. Quick shout out to Mattis has been great this year. He's been the type of person to ask the right questions and ask them when they need to be asked, and I think that's been super helpful and just kind of understanding what's going through and what's going on in my own head that you kind of don't quite recognize until someone asks that and brings it to life.
Well, it's kind of cool, man. It's almost like you're 20 years old, you've been doing this for a while, but you feel like you're kind of still learning some stuff about yourself. Learning how you handle certain situations. But it's cool that you have someone over there that can ask those questions and get you thinking about that stuff. So, but as far as these last two rounds, was it Bronze Hatch and Donington? I'm probably pronouncing those wrong. Donington's a little easier.
It's just Brands Hatch.
Brands Hatch. Okay. What if you could just maybe talk about those, maybe give a little preview of both of those? I know you've already been to Donington Park, but this next one, Brands Hatch, what's that one going to look like?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, I would say, probably our most challenging weekend of the season. So the bottom line is that we are going to be going into qualifying with no experience on the track. We have one test day, and that's on a different layout than what the race weekend is. And so, yeah, we'll be going into the race weekend with no laps in that car around that track. So, like I said, it's going to be our most challenging weekend, but at the end of the day, I think maybe that will bring out some parts of me that I haven't seen in a while, where it's, that ability to jump into a car with little to no experience and just make it happen, which is something that I was known for in the US, and I think that can be something I'm known for here.
Well, I'll tell you what, just from my standpoint, someone who's a little bit new to racing and watching, I have such a good time watching you race, and obviously following you on social media. Just really fun to see your desire, your passion for it, but also then when I get to see you on the track, it's like, oh my gosh, I know that guy. Like he's in that awesome car. But kind of speaking about your awesome car, I noticed that you're wearing a new shirt, and you said it is very similar to your suit. So, how did you guys kind of end up on the livery that you have, and why those colors? I guess I love it, by the way.
Yeah. So this is a new shirt. Yeah, it's basically based off of the car. I believe it's out in our store right now, but I should do some promotions on that soon. Otherwise, yeah. So our graphics designer Martin from Core Motorsport, basically, we just gave him the reins and said, "Make a cool looking car," and he definitely delivered on that. The color scheme combines my color scheme, which is the pink that falls in my Jason Pribyl Autosports logo, and then the team's colors, which is the ADM LTD, which is Gary's management company. So it's a combination of those two. This is a combination of both of us that make that team. And yeah, I'd say credit goes to Martin for making it look good on the car. And the suit is designed by HRX as well. So you can look like me if you want. If you don't, that's all right. I understand. But yeah.
No, I definitely got to get me one of those shirts, man. I really do. But I was kind of curious about this. Between you and the drivers, do you guys ever brag about or ever have a competition who has the coolest looking car? Because I mean, I would vote for yours. Obviously, I'm probably a little bit biased, but like honestly, man, it really does look cool. So, but like the drivers ever talk about that stuff?
I think more so than ever, we will make fun of you if you have a bad looking car. I've done it once or twice, and we just joke about it. It's never anything serious, but yeah, I can think of one instance this season where I was like, "Yeah, man, you got to change that."
Well, it's funny. The one that I would not want to drive, and I would say, I mean, obviously, I'm not a driver. I would drive any car that they gave me, but I always find, I think it's Scotty McLaughlin in the Indy car. They call his the big yellow submarine. That's the one car. I just don't think I would want a big yellow car. Other than that, I think I could handle all the colors. But no, that's very cool. I appreciate the insight there. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you joining our first kind of a podcast. what we're going to be doing with the Wings and Wheels Foundation moving forward with all of our drivers. But there's anything else that you wanted to say or include? But if not, man, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I think we've covered it there. That's a good start, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the other drivers, and looking forward to being back on in a couple of weeks or months or however long it takes.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, and good luck the rest of the season, and we'll definitely keep in touch. But good luck at Brands Hatch and at Donington Park.
All right, awesome.